All right, I guess we are live. I never quite can figure it out, but I usually will restart my feed and see if I'm on there, and if I am, then I know that we're live, but the button says live, so yep, there it is. We are good to go. We are live. Welcome, folks. Very, 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 very excited to be with you tonight because I've got a topic that I could literally talk about in my sleep. I could talk about it while hanging upside down from a tree. It's something that I could talk very fluently with, and I'm not going to need to talk about it alone because I've got a very special guest on with me tonight. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about setting up your first African cichlid tank. Again, this is something I've done. Well, I've only set up my first tank once, but I've set up literally hundreds and hundreds of African cichlid tanks. So I know a thing or two about it. I'm not going to tell you I'm the foremost expert in doing it, but I do have quite a bit of experience to offer to you, and I'm very excited about that. I'm going to talk about everything involved in the process, and I'm not going to do it alone. Like I said, I've got somebody with me tonight that I'm excited to have on because this is a guy I've gotten to know pretty well over the last few months. He is a moderator on the Tank Talk group. He's a moderator on my live streams here. He is none other than the Inquisitive Fish guy, IFG. Y'all know who he is. If you don't know who he is, shame on you. I'm going to give him the opportunity first, before we get into all of this, to introduce himself just in case you don't know who he is. So IFG, take it over, my friend. Let these people know who you are.
What's up, YouTube? It's IFG, the Inquisitive Fish guy. How you doing out there today?
That's your introduction. That's it, huh?
That's it. You can find my channel, IFG, the Inquisitive Fish guy.
Cool. He's not trying to steal the spotlight. I like that. That's a classy dude right there. So, all right. Well, look, I'll introduce you. How's that? I will tell people what they need to know about you. This is a guy that is, in my opinion, a little bit more than just some dude in his living room with his aquariums. This is a guy that studies this hobby. He is always engulfed in this hobby. And I don't know how long you've been keeping fish, IFG, but the way that you go about it with your videos and all of that, it seems like you're an absolute seasoned veteran. So this guy is a wealth of knowledge. His videos they've been good from the beginning, but I've watched your videos progress as far as the quality of the videos. All of that has been just getting better and better every single time I see a new video from you. So folks, if you have not heard of this guy, go over to his channel. The link is in the description down below. It'll open up in a separate window. You're not going to have to leave the stream. You can go over there, subscribe to his channel, and I'm sure he would appreciate that very much. And you know what? So will you, because he's got some really good videos over there. So, okay, there's no reason for me to kiss your butt anymore, IFG. I mean, it's not like, it's not like you're paying me to do this. I should be the one paying you. So let's get into it. The first thing I have to say is, I don't know if you hear the dog in the background. I don't know if she's coming through on the microphone or not, but I've got a beagle, and that's one of those things that you have to deal with when you have a beagle, is they have big mouths and they're always barking. She's right upstairs, so hopefully that's not coming through on the microphone. I don't even know what she's barking at. So let's get into this. Let's talk about setting up your first African cichlid tank. Folks, if you have questions about setting up your first African cichlid tank or your 18th African cichlid tank, put them down below or over to the side or wherever it is on these live streams. Put them in there, and I've got moderators in there that will hold on to the good questions, and IFG and I will get to those in the end. So, all right. Evan Alexander is his real name. If you're on Facebook, you know that. And I call him Evan because he's my friend. And so, Evan, I'm going to throw a curveball at you for the first question. When it comes to setting up an African cichlid tank, obviously the first question is always going to be, well, what size tank do I need? But I'm not going to go there. I want to mix things up a little bit. You're a guy. You play whatever role you want. You're IFG. You are in your house and somebody just messages you on the internet, or you're in a pet store, whatever. Some stranger comes to you and says, Mr. Alexander, I want to set up my very first African cichlid tank. What is the first thing that pops into your mind, the first thing that you want to tell them before you give them any details about their tank or anything like that? What's the first thing that comes to mind that you want to tell them?
Well, I would have to say that would be aggression. Be prepared for aggression and research the cichlid it is that you want to keep.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was I was doing something else there. Yes, and I would add to that a little bit. The aggression, certainly, that would be the first thing. And the next thing for me is understand that African cichlids they're one of the easier fish to breed. They're not the easiest to breed well and to get an abundance of fry from, but they're the kind of fish, you put them in the tank together, they're going to breed, and you can't stop them from doing it. So understand that that's part of the deal. Most people that get into African cichlids, they're not going to do it and buy all males right off the bat. Most people don't have the money to do that. So they're buying smaller juveniles, and you buy a bunch of juveniles that are males and females, you're bound to have some breeding occur, and you need to be prepared for that. If this is going to be brand new for you, you need to be prepared for that. So yeah, that would be my two-part thing. When they come to me and they say, what's the first thing I need to know? It would be the aggression, and it would be breeding. So, all right. Now we'll get to the obvious question. Again, first timer, somebody that's maybe kept guppies or they've kept planted community tanks or whatever. What is your opinion on tank size for the beginner African cichlid keeper?
My opinion on tank size would be roughly about a 75 gallon for a first timer. I actually started off with a 55, but I would recommend 75 gallons. And here's why. Because what's going to eventually happen is you're going to want to get a bigger and bigger tank. But that 75 is pretty much an ideal size that will segue into maybe a 150 or a 125. So 75 gallons, I would say, is an ideal size for a first-time aquarist.
I mean, this isn't going to be any fun if both of us have the same answers all the time. But yeah, I mean, I would actually, I don't disagree with you at all. 75, I think, is absolutely ideal. Oh, it's not ideal, but it's ideal to start with. I would much rather see somebody do a 55 though than anything smaller than that. So what I always tell people is absolutely the minimum 55. If you can go bigger, great. Because like you said, everybody ends up upgrading. I mean, I don't know an African cichlid keeper that bought a 29-gallon tank and put a dozen peacocks in it, and that's the tank that they've had for 5 years. I don't know anybody that's done that. Every single African cichlid keeper I've ever known started with something small, and it just builds and builds and builds. And you know, I always tell people, I'm sure you do too, you know what, just if you have the money, or if you can search Craigslist, even if you have to drive a couple hours, if you can get that big tank first, you're going to be gold, because you're not going to have to upgrade 5 times, and bigger tanks are easier to take care of. So, but I agree. I agree to a point. I would say I'd be comfortable with people using a 55. Now, if you're going to be keeping all large predator haps, then, you know, that might not work in a 55, but I wouldn't really want that in a 75 either. So, but smaller haps, peacocks, and mbunas, absolutely 75, 55, either way, I think you're going to be good to go. So, all right, so then we got the tank. Now, I'm going to throw another curveball at you here. We're going to expand on the tank a little bit, because this is a question that over the last 5 years I've gotten a lot. Okay, where do I get that tank? Should I buy brand new? Can I buy used? Is it okay to buy used? What is your philosophy, your opinion on, you know, where to get the tank?
My opinion would be to search outlets such as Craigslist, because you can catch one of the dollar per gallon sales. So that way you're not spending a ton of money on the aquarium. But Craigslist, that's a good outlet. And also the Facebook groups. Some Facebook groups have what you call for sale posts, and you can check those out as well. But pre-owned is pretty good, but I would recommend that before you take that aquarium away, already leak tested. You don't want to get it to your home, fill it up with water, and it's leaking.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, leaking is certainly not something you want to have happen, especially if it's the very first tank you've ever set up. But yeah, dollar a gallon sale to me, I think is one of the most brilliant things that's ever been done in all of fish keeping, because the money's not in the tank anyway. Everybody knows that you buy the glass box and it's everything else that ends up costing you a fortune. So they sell those for dirt cheap. There's not really any money in aquariums anyway. So they make all of their money on the filters and the gravel and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, $1 a gallon sale is definitely something that I would recommend to people that are setting up multiple tanks. But Craigslist, absolutely. I mean, the best thing that I like about Craigslist is that you can usually find everything that we're talking about right here, that we're going to talk about in this whole show. You'll find somebody that's selling all of it. I took a little break from the hobby. I came back into the hobby in 2008. I hadn't had an aquarium for about 2 years before then. And the first tank I bought was a complete setup, everything, for 125 gallon. And I paid a ridiculously low amount of money for it because a guy just wanted it out of his house. So the point is, usually when people are getting out of the fish keeping hobby, they want out and they want these big gigantic boxes out of their house. And so they'll usually dump them very quick and very cheap. And usually it's going to be everything that you need to get started. So that's a great bit of advice. I don't think that there is a preference new versus used. It's very rare that you're going to find an aquarium that's beat up to a point where you can't use it. So, and you can certainly clean a used aquarium if you're worried about whatever being in the tank that's going to harm your fish. You can clean it out and it's not an issue. So yeah, I fully support buying used. I've bought literally over 500 used aquariums. So that's definitely an easy way to do it. So, all right, so let's build a tank. This is what we're going to do. Since you suggested 75 gallons, we're gonna build a tank around a 75 gallon. So whoever it is that we're talking to, they got a 75 gallon. They went to Petco. No, they didn't do it on the $1 a gallon sale because those only go up to 55. They have a 75 gallon glass box from somewhere. I don't care where they got it. They have the box. They're ready to go. Do we need to spend any time on stands? I mean, I don't know. Do you have a preference on stands?
I did DIY stands. So, I mean, I like to do that type of stuff myself, but you can find the stands at a fairly decent price pre-owned as well. But for me, way to go on stuff like that. You can save yourself a ton of money and then it's fun. I mean, it's one of those things where you can stand back and say, hey, that looks good. I've done that. So it's really engaging. So I would say DIY, stand and canopy, in my opinion.
And you can go as simple as one of these, which I have a video on how to do that. Or you can build a DIY stand that's elaborate like that one, which I did not build. I'm fully capable of it because I was a cabinet maker for a living for a long time. But I didn't build that, but you can go elaborate like that, or you can build a simple one out of nothing but 2x4s. Watch my video. It's very, very simple. You can even do it with a handsaw. Very easy. Stands, there are people, just like there are people that have, hardcore beliefs on all different facets of this hobby. There are stand people out there that would just go absolutely bananas if you don't have a stand that's absolutely perfect. It's crazy. I mean, a store-bought stand is going to hold the aquarium. That's what it's designed for. They're not going to sell a stand that is going to fall apart as soon as you fill it with water. So if it is a store-bought stand, usually from the big box stores, they're not that expensive. You can get them that are pretty nice. Let you in on a little secret. We have a stand for a 75-gallon tank that's black, and it's such a nice piece of furniture. This is embarrassing. It's such a nice piece of furniture that I'm actually using it to put my TV on up in my living room right now. So you can get some nice stands from the big box store. But yeah, if you're trying to do this on a budget, absolutely build your own. The one like that for a 75-gallon tank will cost you $30, if that. I mean, I don't even know that it would cost you that. It might cost you $20. So, okay, I didn't want to spend much time on stands anyway. What about the big debate? What about the filtration debate? 75-gallon tank, African cichlids, keep in mind. What is your preference on filtration?
As from a brand perspective, I mean, fluval, of course. Eheim's a good name, but to me, you want to turn your aquarium over at least 4 times. So that's what I would be more concerned with. I wouldn't be as concerned with brand or manufacturer. I would, get something fairly decent that can turn my tank over at least 4 times.
Do you have a preference over canisters? I'm not going to recommend a sump for a newbie, but hang on the back canisters. Do you have either way is better for you?
My preference are canister filters, but there are some pretty decent hang-on backs that do the job as well.
Okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm sorry, what was that?
I was going to say Aqua Clear is a good hang-on back, but I prefer canisters for my aquariums.
Gotcha. This is what we're going to do. We're gonna have some fun when we're done with this. We're going to put together a tank, and we'll do it very quick. We will do micro budget, or maybe we should do that regardless. Okay, from here on out, we can start now. We're going to help people that are setting up an aquarium on a micro budget, and then one that has a normal budget, and then one that is kind of like money's not an issue. Okay, so let's do that moving forward. I think that would be fun, and I might have to look up a little bit on gallonage and stuff like that for some of these things. But let's start with the filtration. Rock bottom budget filtration for a 75 African cichlid tank. What are you going to do?
Rock bottom budget. I'm going to pick up a Sun Aqua Top for a canister. Rock bottom button back. I'm going to pick up, I believe it's called an Emperor 300s, something like that. They're only like $20 a piece, and they do a really good job. And that Sun, it's like maybe $60 or so you can't beat that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Suns. I hear about them. My God, people ask me about them all the time, so they must be good because they're just everywhere. But I've never actually had one. I like where you're going with it. I can't necessarily use Sun though because I've never used them. I'm going to go one a little easier than you. I'm going to say 2 Penguin 350s, Marineland Penguin 350s. Now, if there's a newbie watching this, which there probably isn't, but they might watch the replay. If there's a newbie watching this and they see this bald guy, well, I'm not bald today, but this bald guy suggested a Penguin 350 for this 75-gallon tank, and then they look it up, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. The Penguin 350 can accommodate a 70-gallon aquarium. Why is it that he's saying that we need to get 2? The reason for it is, I'm sure you, Evan, would give people this exact same advice. I always advise people for an African cichlid tank to double the filtration. If your aquarium is a 75-gallon tank, filter it as if it's a 150. So the 2 Penguin 350s is going to accommodate that. Very easy to use, very efficient. It's kind of a step down from your Emperors. I like the idea of your Emperor. That's my favorite hang on the back is the Emperor 400. But 2 Penguin 350s, you can pick them up dirt cheap, and they are very efficient. I've got 2 of them running right over there. So that's where I would go for my budget setup. Now, what about kind of mid-grade? Where would you go middle of the road?
Middle of the road, I would probably go Marineland, bigger from a canister perspective, or I would go with a bigger Sun. There's the 304B, the 404B, and as far as canisters, middle of the road, I would likely use the Aqua Clear, I believe it's called, Aqua Clear.
Aqua Clear for the hang on the backs, you mean?
That is correct. That is
okay.
That is correct.
I think you mistakenly said hang on the canisters, but that's okay. I forgive you. It's no big deal. I'm looking up. I'm looking something up here because I don't know the model number. Where are we at? Is it the Marineland C260? Is that what it is, or which one? Yeah,
that's it.
The canister filter.
That's the exact one.
Or 206, 306. Let's see, 306, 206, and 406. I don't know what gallons all of these do. But I think the one I was going to say was the 306. Let me get this here. Yep, that's it. That's the one right there. No, it's not. Oh, gosh. Why is anybody watching this? The Marineland 406. The Marineland 406 and the C406. And the reason why I say that is because it is the larger one that's going to accommodate double the filtration. At least I think. My mind is blowing here. I'm losing my mind. I don't even know why I'm doing this. The Marineland canister filter, and I'm getting the model numbers mixed up because I'm confusing them with Fluval. I think it's 260 or 360. I don't know what it is. It's the internet is taking too long because I'm streaming. But the Marineland canister, that's where I would go mid-grade. I don't even know that I would go hang on the backs. If I was going to go hang on the backs for kind of middle of the road, I think I'd probably go with my Emperors, the 2 Emperor 400s.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
So now we got to get into fantasy land. We got to talk about money is no option, no object. Everything's good. Get whatever you want. What are we going to use for the 75 gallon?
Fluval FX4, Fluval FX6, Eheim, one of the big boys. Yeah, pretty much. Fluval or Eheim.
Now, why?
I would say.
Why are you going to do that? Why are you going to do that when you know I was going to say the FX4? Why would you do that? I mean, I thought you and I were friends. I don't understand. Why is it that you get to look like the smart one? No, that's exactly where I would go. You are the smart one, by the way. FX4, that's where I would go because we are talking about a 75-gallon tank. I think that an FX6 would be that's too much overkill. You're not going to hurt anybody with it, but I think that's an expense. You're going to spend $100 more, I think, for the FX6 versus the FX4. And it's money that you don't necessarily need to spend. You can put that money into substrate or decorations or fish. So, yeah, FX4 is rated for up to 250 gallons. I've got one on that tank right there. Look how clear it is. You can't go wrong. 75-gallon tank is 50 gallons less than that one. You put an FX4 on there, you're good to go. You're filtering more than double, but you're spending good money on it. I mean, what are they, $299? I don't remember. You're going to spend good money on it.
Right around that.
Yeah, so you need to be in that situation where money is no object. But you know what? The good thing, and you touched on this earlier, Evan, you buy that filter, you'll never buy another filter. You're never going to want to upgrade it. You're not buying a V6 Mustang knowing you want the V8, and you're going to eventually go back and trade in that V6 to get the V8. You're not going to have that. You're not buying something that's going to be like an intermediate thing, or not intermediate. What's the word? Interim filter. You're buying the filter that's going to be on there forever. So, if you look at it, yes, it is an expensive option to do it that way, but you're never going to have to buy another filter again. So in the end, you might end up saving money doing it that way. All right. So the next thing on the list is it's not anything that we need to debate as far as entry level, mid-level heaters. I mean, where are you at with heaters? How do you feel? Like, do you have a brand preference on heaters, or, where are you at with that?
My brand preference on heaters are the Eheim. I mean, they last long. They're really, really good heaters. So all of my aquariums, I have Eheim, but I have tested other brands in the past. None of them failed on me. I decided to, go with Eheim as my brand of choice.
Okay. And you're going to recommend, what are you going to recommend as far as wattage on that heater?
300, 75, 300.
300. Okay.
I also would like, John, for the heaters, I run heater temperature control devices, but I have big aquariums. I'm not recommending that everyone do that, but for a big aquarium, yes. But I also run little heater control devices on my heaters.
Like you're talking about heaters with built-in thermostats is what you're talking about, or you put something additionally on there?
I put something additional on there. In the event that the heater fails on the on mode, the device turns the heater off completely.
Okay, I got you. All right, and now we're on the same page. Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree. 300-watt heaters, you know, one of the more expensive ones that you're going to get out there, but it's not going to have to work as hard to get to where you want it to be. The only thing that I'm going to add to that, I don't care if you're a beginner, I don't care if you're an experienced fish keeper, if this is your one and only aquarium or if this is your 5th aquarium, I'm going to recommend you put 2 of them in there, because you never know when that one fails. And when you have tropical fish that really want the water to be, you know, above 80, preferably 82 or even, you know, 83, 84, which is extreme, but you can do it. You get if the temperature drops because your heater fails, you might not know it. I mean, if you're somebody that's particularly anal and you're going to look at your thermometer every single day, well, then it might not be a problem for you. But more than likely, if your heater fails, you're not going to know it, because you're not in the water. You don't know that the temperature has dropped. And if it drops down to, I mean, my basement's at about 69 degrees. If it drops down to that, you're going to have a bunch of unhappy, sick fish. So having that backup is good. Put your second heater in there, put it a degree lower than the first, and then you'll be safe. And you won't know that they're broken until both of them are broken. So that's, and I mean, there are people, I've heard of people alternating the one that is a degree higher, so that you're kind of making this one work, and then for a month you make this one work. That's getting a little bit beyond this conversation, but having a backup heater for worst case scenario, have the backup heater in a drawer somewhere, maybe not in the tank, but in a drawer somewhere. It's there just in case, because what if your heater goes out at 10 o'clock at night? What are you going to do? You can't go to the store and pick one up. Amazon's not going to get it to you in time. So I always like to recommend people to have backup heaters. All right, next thing on the list, something I don't know a whole lot about. I push the button and they come on. And if I push the button and they don't come on, then I get a new one. Lights. Lights are actually, they are a big deal in African cichlid tanks, because you can have a crappy light and your fish are not going to show the bright colors that these are right now and Evan's fish do. So where are you at with lights? I don't know brands of lights enough to do low, medium, high. So let's just talk about the lights that we like. What is your preference on those? And as far as size of them and all that kind of stuff, LEDs versus T5 and all that.
Okay. I prefer the current LED, current USA. I use those guys. I also use the, I have 3 different type of lights that I use, 3 different manufacturers. I use the current, I use Fluvo, and I also use Aquatic Life, which has a built-in timer, and it also has a sunset setting on the lights. That way you get sunrise and sunset. But my favorite one of all is, I would have to say, is actually the DIY light that Joey did. I like those lights. I haven't attempted it yet, but I really like how they look.
Somebody's going to start some kind of conspiracy because you broke up really bad when you were talking about Joey. And so people are going to be like, John doesn't want people hearing about Joey. Come on, Joey's my friend. No, Evan was talking about DIY lights. Joey has multiple videos. King of DIY, Joey Mullen, Waru Joey. If you don't know who he is, then this must be your first day on YouTube, because everybody knows who Joey is. I have not done what Joey did as far as the DIY lights, but I've watched the videos multiple times, and one day I probably will. I've got 3 different types of lights. Well, no, I've got 3 different LEDs on these 3 tanks right here. You can see the tanks behind me have the small LED strips, but there's only the 3 big LEDs on each one. They're little, I don't know, what are they, 24-inch lights. This tank above has actually 4 lights on it. It's got 2 T5s and 2 4-foot Marineland LEDs. These are the double bright LEDs on this one. It's kind of a hodgepodge, but it's behind the canopy so nobody can see it. I've been very happy with those. I've been running those for like 3 years now, and they've been treating me really well. I have another Marineland double bright that you can't see right now on camera, but it's in my hospital tank down there. And then this one is 4 Coral Life LEDs. And the reason why there's 4 is because it's such a deep tank. If you look at it, it's 1.5 times the depth of this one. So with it being as deep as it is, I've got 4 in there. Plus, I wanted the light up front as well as the light in the back. So that's why that one's ridiculously bright too. So I don't know that I have a personal preference. I know that everybody talks about current, and I've seen so many current LEDs on YouTube, and they look fantastic. So even though I've never had one, I would feel comfortable recommending that brand, just like IFG just did. But I don't have any personal experience with those. The biggest thing, lighting can be expensive. I just had a friend email me or text me today, hey, what kind of lights are you using on the 240? And I told him 4 Coral Lights, and he's like, oh my God, those are $180 a piece. Lighting can be expensive. But it's one of those things that, in my opinion, especially in an African cichlid tank, can make or break the tank. So don't let it be something that you go ultra cheap on. If you're trying to save money, maybe go middle of the road, get a lower grade LED. It's always going to be better than some crappy, fluorescent. I don't know. I'm going to get myself in trouble there, but. I mean, bail me out here, Evan. I'm choking here on this. I don't want to.
Well, there's the middle of the road Beamsworks. I would recommend Beamsworks LED for middle of the road. They're fairly inexpensive. You can also buy a timer module that you can attach. It's a plug and play module. Not difficult to do at all. The Beamsworks are the par levels. So if you have a fairly deep tank, they won't be a good light for your aquarium because the par levels are very low on that particular brand. But middle of the road, I would say Beamsworks.
Okay. All right. Very good. Next thing is the one that everybody's going to want to debate over, and the one that I've started my own personal little controversy on because I've just gone and done the big switch from gravel to sand. But let's talk about substrate. I think I know where you're going to go with this, but what are you going to go with? You're setting up that first African cichlid tanker. You're helping up your buddy. What are you going to recommend to him for his first African cichlid tank as far as substrate goes?
If it's a guy that's a first timer, I would not recommend sand. I would recommend gravel, a natural looking gravel, maybe the pea gravel that gives the substrate something that's pretty similar to their natural environment. But for an experienced hobbyist, I would say sand substrate is what I would prefer.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of the show where I'm going to kick him off. I'm going to no longer have IFG on as a guest because he keeps stealing my answers, and it's quite frankly starting to piss me off a little bit. My ego is starting to get messed with here. No, word for word, I completely agree with that. Gravel is for the beginner. It's not a beginner gravel. I'm not saying if you're somebody that's been keeping fish for 20 years and you're using gravel, you're still some kind of a rookie. I don't mean it that way. What I mean, just like he said, gravel is easier to maintain. It's easier to deal with than sand is. So for that beginner, absolutely gravel. Plus gravel looks nice. I mean, I've got gravel in there and it doesn't look bad. It looks nice. You can get that natural looking gravel, or if you want to be wild and crazy, you can get neon blue or neon pink. Please don't do that, but you can if you want to. And you can mix up a couple of different colors and stuff like that. You can have some fun with it, and it's in most cases cheaper than sand, but not necessarily this sand. Like this sand right here is about as cheap as you can get. This is pool filter sand that I have in here. I bought it at Walmart for $6 a bag, and it took 3 bags to do 125 gallons. So if you absolutely on a budget, that's going to be your cheapest option. But again, I completely agree with you that it's something that you don't have to be some kind of marine biologist to maintain an aquarium that has sand in it. But you need to understand what sand can do, the benefits that it has, the disadvantages that it has, And if you're curious after watching this, I'm going to have a video this Sunday talking all about sand. So that's going to be coming out. You know, I'm working on that as we speak. So if you want to know more about sand, definitely watch that. But yeah, to keep things simple, go with gravel. What do you have a preference on thickness of it? Like how deep you want your substrate to be?
If it was gravel, I would maybe go an inch and a half. With sand, I usually go. And if you're gonna, like Corey mentioned before, if you're gonna use, if you're gonna have plants, 2.5, 3 would be an ideal measurement for your substrate sand.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, for me, what I've told, I don't even know how many people. You are not the one, when an African cichlid tank, you are not the one that is going to dictate where that substrate is. The fish are going to move it around for you, and they are going to decorate your tank. So to me, it's like, I like the entire bottom of the tank to be covered, and then maybe another layer over top of that. That's as far as I go with it. But again, like Evan was just talking about, you're not going to put plants in an African cichlid tank. Maybe we can talk about that as we go on, but you know, a lot of it is going to depend on what you're keeping in the tank as far as how deep you're going to want to go with it. But yeah, you know, inch or so I think is perfectly fine, but I like the bottom to just be completely covered. My first tanks, I mean, 15, 16 years, I had nothing but gravel in my tanks, and I loved it. So gravel is easy, it's readily available, and it looks nice. So there you go. Now, this one we can fight about. No, I don't think we will, because I think you have the same philosophy I do. Daggone it. Let's talk about decorating an African cichlid tank, because we've already got the tank. We bought it off Craigslist. We've got the filters. We've got the heaters. We've got it lit. We've got a substrate in it. Now we need to decorate it specifically for those African cichlids. What are we going to decorate it with? And let's keep things simple here. What are we going to put in there for our fish to swim around and play in?
Rocks and driftwood, depending on what type of African eating, but just natural rocks that you can pick up from like a rock. Don't go out to your LFS and say, hey, I need a ton of rocks, because they're going to be very expensive. You can find rocks at a local rock yard, a beach, a lake, whatever is in your city. But this is I like rocks. However, to overpopulate aquariums with rocks, to me, that's just a bit much. Because what ends up happening is you create too many territories in an aquarium, man, and they're going to fight over those territories.
Once again, he steals everything I was going to say. This is ridiculous. I mean, no, that I was going to say the same thing as far as the territories. So that new African cichlid keepers do, and I'm not saying they're doing it wrong, but they create these very elaborate rockscapes, and they're beautiful. They're gorgeous. They're a huge pain to take care of, but they're beautiful. And you see all these tanks on YouTube, very elaborate. Somebody like IFG, like myself, like Steve Poland, and many, many others, Jay Wilson, that have been keeping African cichlids for a long time, you're going to notice that their tanks don't have a ton of rock work and all of this stuff going on in it. I mean, that's actually more decor in an African cichlid tank than I've had in a long time. The reason why is because more than likely, and I'm sure, Evan, you started this way too, everybody's going to start off with that elaborate tank, and then they're going to realize two things. One, it's a huge pain in the ass to take care of, and two, you're going to have things like he was talking about. You're providing spaces for the fish. African cichlids are extraordinarily territorial. They want to claim their space, and they will fight to the death to protect that space, especially if they're going to breed. So that space, you're asking for trouble, basically. So usually we figure this out after a little while, and we start to take things out of our tank and take the decor out and keep it minimalistic, kind of like that is. But a lot of people would make the argument that decorating the tank is the whole reason to do it. You're getting, you get to express yourself. It's like an art project, and they love it. I don't think that there's any right way or wrong way to do it. I'm not a huge fan of driftwood personally, just because of the effects that it can have on water parameters. If you're using big pieces like I've got here, that one, in case you don't know it, folks, is fake. That's not real wood. That's made of stone. But I'm a fan of that. But in small pieces, if it's part of your decor, is perfectly fine. But this is where you can have fun with it. Like he said, there's a lot of cheap ways of doing it. Going to rock yards, going down to the beach and collecting rocks. There's a lot of ways of accumulating rocks if you want to fill your tank full of rocks. But just understand it's probably going to be temporary, because you'll learn very fast that it looks great, but there's way too many cons to having that in there. I've got one more thing on my list here, and then we're going to have to kind of free-for-all from this point on. The last thing on my list to advise to the new African cichlid keeper, tank mates. How? Because, oh my God, it's the most common question I get. But what is your advice to people on tank mates?
Well, pretty much, African cichlids can survive even if you do have mixed aquariums, as you can see right behind you there, John. But I would advise to research, and I would research the temperaments of the fish. But I would also research their diet and their natural habitat and stuff like that. But natural tanks, not natural, but mixed tanks, you can do it, as you can see right behind you. But research, man, I would say just research that temperament. That would be number one in my book. Research the temperament.
Yeah, and the other thing, once again, as far as the newbie, the new African cichlid keeper, on top of what he said, let's just keep African cichlids with African cichlids while we're starting. I mean, the number one questions for me are, can I put my convicts with Africans? Can I put Oscars with Africans? Can I put blood parrots? Can I do this? Can I do that? Let's stay away from that. Let's keep things easy. I am a believer in the philosophy, the KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, stupid. If we keep Africans with Africans, we should be okay. Now, there are people that will take that to another level and argue that there's certain African cichlids that you can't mix together. I don't feel like having that debate right now. I don't feel like going into all of that. That's something that you are going to learn through time. But my suggestion, to keep things simple, and I had a store for 2.5 years, and this never failed me. I tell people, one lake at a time. If you're going to start a tank, and if it's from Lake Malawi, it can go in with your other Lake Malawian fish. That's the way I like to keep it. Yes, there are fish from Tanganyika that you can mix in. I've got it right there, 2 fish from Tanganyika in that tank with Malawans. Yes, you can do it, but again, under the KISS philosophy, let's keep it simple, and let's just stick with one individual lake for your tank, and everybody's going to go Malawi. I mean, that's the most readily available. They're the most colorful. They're the cheapest. That's where everybody's going to go. So there you go. But as far as tank mates, just don't. Let's just keep it all African cichlids. The one thing that I will say, and I don't know, you can't see them. The one thing that I will say, another common question, now this is after you've got your tank set up, how do I control algae? I do always put standard, classic, I don't know what you want to call them, Plecostomus in my African cichlid tanks. They've never failed me. They always do well. They are not going to take the place of you, the fish keeper. There's going to be algae that you're going to have to clean off too. We don't have fish do the work for us, but diatom algae is very common in brand new tanks, and in my opinion, there's no better solution than a pleco for that. They just eat it up like it's dessert. So very, very good way of controlling that. I've always, in my big African cichlid tanks, I've always kept plecos in there with them. Not bristlenose because they're too small and fragile, but the big ones that like practically have a turtle shell on them, those are the ones I go with my Africans.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. The common pleco, I believe, is the pleco that you're talking about. I agree 100%. However, most hobbyists don't realize that pleco does have to eat actual fish food as well, not just the algae from the aquarium. And also, another tip would be to isolate your lighting, schedule your lighting. Don't leave your lights on for 20 hours at a time. Because remember, the lighting is for you, not for the fish. It's for you to enjoy the fish. So use timers. But plecos, I agree 100%. I actually have a common pleco in my 220. You can't see that guy because he's always hiding. But yeah, plecos, I agree 100%.
Yeah, mine is actually right there. He's doing some work, and he's right there. He's a big fella. He's about 12 inches. But yeah, to add to, I keep adding to everything you're saying because you're just such a genius. Plecos, like you said, they do need to be fed. They're not going to do the work for you. You still have to do work. Yes, they are algae eaters. You can feed them algae wafers, which is what I throw in for mine. In that tank, it's hard because the Africans just eat all the algae wafers. But these are catfish. I mean, that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Plecos, plecostomus are catfish. So just imagine, if you put a catfish in a tank and you don't ever feed it, what's going to happen? So, and plecostomus will eat other fish if they're small enough. So, you got to know that going into. I would definitely, if you're going to put a pleco in with your other fish, make sure it's big enough to where it can hold its own. That's where I would go with that. So, all right. So that's all I've got as far as our list, because I only had 5 minutes to put together a list. So, are you up for taking some questions from the audience? They're not necessarily new African cichlid tank questions, but are you up for that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
First of all, big thank you to Paul Martin for helping out with this. He's been flowing some questions my way here. First one is from Dylan Spaltman. I hope I'm saying your name right. Loving the stream. Thank you. So am I. How do you people feel about under gravel filters? I'm going to go ahead and answer that first. I'm just going to say no. Back to you,
I was going to say the same exact thing. That's no on the under gravel filters. No, absolutely not.
I will explain myself. They are very appealing because it gives people the impression that it's going to make your life so much easier and it looks cool and all this kind of stuff. And there's quiet, but no, you have to understand what it is that they do. They've got a plate that's underneath your gravel that is sucking all of the poop and uneaten food down under that plate. And there's pressure down there because the pumps are pulling it up. So you can't vacuum it out. So you're basically leaving all of this uneaten food and fish poop underneath your gravel, and you can't get it out. That's the absolute number one reason why I'm not a huge fan of them. But there's people that like the looks, and that is another very, very common question. Not picking on you here, Dylan. I'm just saying, no, just no. Next question is from our friend Inventory King, and I have not proofread these questions, by the way. So if they ask some weird stuff, it's not my fault. John and Evan, what is the best tank footprint in your opinion? That's a unique question. I like that. I'll let you have that first so I can take some time to think about it.
The best tank footprint would be the biggest tank that you can afford. Easy answer for that one.
Come on, you got to go. You got to go a little better than that. Come on.
I mean, I would say depth-wise, at least, in my opinion, depth, maybe 3 feet, width, 48 inches, and length, 72. So that's like a 240, isn't it, John? I just described a 240, didn't I?
The 240s come in a lot of different sizes. That's 72 by 24 by 30 something, 30 something tall. But yeah, I mean, for African cichlids, you said 36 inches deep. My God, that's a monster. I do like them a little bit deeper. And when I say deep, I'm talking front to back, folks. In aquarium language, it's front to back would be the depth. The height, width, and then depth. I don't know how to demonstrate that. I like deeper tanks, like you're saying. The 75s, what are they, 18 inches deep? And then, you know, a lot of 240s, 150s are, I mean, I like them deeper, mainly because if you're going to keep predator haps, like IFG has behind him, some of these fish that get 14, 16 inches long, you know, you don't want them to be stuck only going one direction because they can't turn around because your tank is only 12 inches deep. So you shouldn't be having a fish like that in a 12-inch deep tank anyway. But yeah, I like them. I don't think that there's a particular need for bow fronts or box style where it's a perfect square or it needs to be a certain length. I don't know that there's definite rules as far as that go. I do agree with you though. It should always be as big as you can go. Whether the biggest tank you can afford is a 180-gallon bow front, get it. That's great. A 240 like that, I know a guy that'll sell them to you. This guy right here will sell you one of those big tanks. I mean, go and you can't go wrong. But I don't think that there's any particular rules on what the footprint has to be. I mean, get as big a tank as you can get for the space that you're going to put it in. There you go. Scuba Steve, love that guy. He doesn't want to know my answer, so I'm going to just give this to you, and I'm just going to leave. I'll come back later. IFG, do you do anything to your floor before going with a monster tank? That's a great question.
It is a great question, and it depends on if your floor needs bracing. Myself, my floors underneath are cement, and so I didn't need to support my floors. But I'm an engineer by trade, so if you do have floors that don't have the proper support brace, you will have to go in and put some extra support for heavy tanks, because these tanks can get upwards to 1,000 pounds with filled with water, fish, and decoration.
Now, you broke up a little bit when you were talking about what your floors are. What did you say your floors are? Are they concrete floors?
Yes, my floors are concrete underneath, so I did not have to support mine. But if your floors are not, I would highly advise to put some additional support beams to support your aquariums. Ideally, if you're going with a big, large aquarium, because those tanks get very heavy with water, fish, and decoration.
I totally agree. I've always told people, if your tank is sitting on wood, if the tank is 150 gallons or larger, I'm going to start getting really nervous. That's the way I look at it. I mean, you do the math, 8 pounds per gallon, you know, and then you're going to talk about, you know, with a large tank, you're going to talk about probably a couple 100 pounds worth of substrate. And then us weirdos that keep African cichlids, we're going to put 100 pounds of rocks in there. You got your filter, all of this. You are talking well over 1,000 pounds. If it's sitting on wood, that's going to make me nervous. I'm going to feel a little bit better about it if it is on an exterior wall of the house. Evan's an engineer. He can attest to this. The brunt of the weight in a structure is around the perimeter. And so the way how homes are constructed, more than likely, unless you're in a mobile home, no offense, but the exterior walls are going to be the strongest places to put aquariums. But still, if it's 150 gallons or more, I'm starting to get really nervous. If you got 150 gallons or more, you need to be putting something else underneath there, because your house comes crashing down. What are you going to do then? You want to talk about your wife being mad at you? Good God. So,
yeah, I agree.
Right,
100%.
This is a good one from our friend Corey McElroy. You know that guy, right? I know him. You know, nobody really likes him, but no, everybody loves Corey. How many Africans do you recommend adding at a time to an African tank that already has some stock? I love this question. That's really good. So you got an African cichlid tank. You're this person that put together a new tank. You want to add some fish. How many do you do? Uh-oh. Did we lose Evan?
3 at a time. I do half.
All right, hold on there, IFG. You're breaking up real bad on me now. Can you start over?
Okay. I said I normally add 3 at a time, but I have in the past added only 1 fish. But there's a couple of tips and tricks that you can do to prevent the other fish from bullying on the fish that you add to the tank, such as add the fish when you're feeding, turn off the lighting, certain little tricks like that that you can do. Just do something to deter the attention of the other fish that are already occupying the aquarium.
Very true. And those are the same tips that I've given. And once again, I don't even know why I'm here, because, you're just answering all the questions for me. But yeah, it's absolutely true. African cichlids, being as aggressive as they are, they're always looking for their next fight. And using the human analogy, that's something that I've always done. You have a room full of 12 dudes, and they've been in there for a year, 12 guys. And I mean, there's going to be an alpha in there, and then there's going to be a bunch of, if you got 12 dudes, you're going to have one alpha, and then you're going to have 11 that are subdominant, but they all want to be the alpha. And so they're all looking for a reason to basically start chaos. And then you throw one new guy into the mix. What do you think everybody's going to do? They're all going to see him as a threat, and they're all going to go after that one guy. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Doesn't mean it's going to happen every single time, but I've seen it happen a lot. So I completely agree. I would even, I like to add them in even larger groups than that. I like to say, put 5 or 6 in at a time. But I agree with you, minimum of 3, because then that does disperse that attention to 3 different ones, and there's a little bit of chaos going on. The fish don't really know who they want to go pick on, so they just forget about it and they move on. So very good there. Thank you, Aquarium Co-op, for that. April DeVost 1. What do I do when my new cichlid doesn't want to eat much? Is it from just needing to get comfortable with a new home?
It can be several things. It can be several things. So, but you have to give the fish time enough to acclimate themselves to the aquarium. And I'm not talking about water temperatures or water parameters. I'm talking about the actual environment that they have been introduced to. With frontosas, they take maybe a week or so before they really show some sort of interest in food. But with certain fish, it depends on, again, but it can be several things when it comes to the fish not actually eating.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't know where I heard this from, but it might have been, I don't know. It was somewhere online. Somebody said that they had an Oscar that hadn't eaten in 3 months, and they were wondering what they could do to help their fish to start eating again. Now, we're not talking about Oscars here, but look, if a fish is alive for 3 months, it's eating something. I mean, a fish is not going to be alive if it hasn't eaten for 3 months. But that's a sidebar there. It is very common. There's really not a whole lot you can do. The biggest mistake that a lot of people make when they have fish that don't want to eat is they just keep throwing more and more and more food in there for them. And that's huge. That's the biggest mistake that fish keepers make, is overfeeding. So I use the philosophy that my mother taught me when my daughter was a newborn, and she would go every once in a while. She wouldn't want to eat. And my mom, the way moms are, my mom would say, well, don't feed her. She'll eat when she's hungry. And I'm like, all right, well, that makes sense to me. And so the fish are the same way. Now, if you get to a point where your fish are starting to look a little frail and they're looking a little skinny, then you might need to take some other measures. Isolate that fish in their own tank, preferably. Or if you can't do that, maybe if you have a breeding box or something that you can isolate that fish alone to get them away from stress, and maybe they can calm down a little bit and they'll start to take food. But don't make the mistake of just throwing more and more and more in there, because God Almighty, you're going to end up making the problem much worse than it needs to be.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. There has been more deaths in the hobby from overfeeding than underfeeding, so don't overfeed your fish. I would advise using, maybe, let's just say, for example, if you're going to go on like a weekend like that, I would advise using auto feeders. letting your buddy take care of your fish, because no one's going to take care of your aquarium the way that you do. So I would use auto feeders in that case.
Yeah, I've had friends kill my fish before. It's no fun. Trust me. It makes you question your friend, how much of a friend that person is. But you know what? Your friends mean well. But your friends, like he said, they're never going to take care of your fish the way you would. Renee, with a last name that starts with an M. How did you start with the fish keeping hobby IFG, and what made you decide to go for African cichlids? I am going to put my hands back behind my head, and I'm going to listen to this one because I don't know this one. So take it away.
Okay, I started with keeping fish when I was a kid. My parents always did keep aquariums. So my first fish was actually 2 convict cichlids. But back then I didn't know any better, and I had both of the convict cichlids in like a 20-gallon aquarium. Then eventually my father was like, hey, dude. He ended up purchasing me a bigger tank, which was a 55-gallon. And that's where I started from. And I always, from then on, I kept aquariums. As far as YouTube is concerned and being a part of the YouTube aquatic community, I've always had a YouTube channel, but I was never an uploader. I actually watched YouTube videos for like an entire year before I even posted my first videos. And some of the major channels that I looked at were, of course, you, John, Jay Wilson, Lee, Dustin, so on and so forth, you know the rest. But I've always kept African cichlids, and like I said, my first cichlids were convict cichlids.
Another thing that they asked specifically in the question was what brought you to African cichlids?
African cichlids was the colors, of course. Pretty much what brings everyone to African cichlids. It's just the beautiful array of colors and the different species. When I crossed over to African cichlids, I actually started off with Mbuna. And if you're a first timer, I would advise that as one, maybe your first fish that you're going to want to start out with. But I did start it off with Mbuna cichlids.
Yeah, and that's something that we didn't talk about, and maybe we should have. I told you I was going to sit back and relax and listen to your answer, and I did just that. That beginning African cichlid. But you know what? You just answered it the exact same way I would answer it. Start with the Mbunas. They're beautiful, they're colorful, and they're cheap. And they've got their own set of challenges, but we don't need to debate all of that tonight. But yeah, that was good. Now Hank Schmidt put up a comment, and he was a little bit confused about who's on the show. He said, "Hi, John and Dylan." Unless there's some kind of an inside joke there that I don't know about. I think his spell check might have done.
I have no idea who Dylan is.
Yeah, I don't either, but I think maybe his spell check messed with him a little bit. But how many water changes a month with breeding peacocks?
Breeding peacock? Well, I've never bred African cichlids. I can, from a perspective as far as just upkeep and maintenance of my aquariums, do random water changes. I always test my water. Everybody doesn't do that, but that's what I do. So when my water tests show the water change, I change my water. It's not going to always, it's always different. Sometimes it's within 2 weeks, sometimes it's within 3. So really no number for that one.
Yeah, I mean, as far as breeding goes, I do have quite a bit of experience. I'm not going to go on and on and on, but breeding, if you're breeding peacocks, one of the things that you have to understand is water changes will induce spawning. It is a fact. It is not my opinion. It is absolutely a fact. If you do a water change, it doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to have, a successful spawning, but it definitely gets the juices flowing in the fish, if you know what I mean. So there's really, in this game, there's no rule as far as too many water changes. I don't care what anybody says. If you want to do a 50% water change every single day, you can do it, and your fish will love you for it. You don't need to do that when it comes to breeding. But for us, when we were breeding, we did a 50% water change with cold water And I've told this story a million times. I was religious about doing my water changes on a Sunday. And so I would do all of my water changes on Sunday, and we would come home from work Monday, and we would have like 12 females holding eggs. I mean, it was ridiculous. And that was always a fun thing because we knew, Lisa and I both knew, as soon as we got home on Monday, we were going to go in there and find all these females with their mouths. It was fun. So it definitely works. It is an absolute fact. Water changes will induce spawning, but also having nice, good, clean water where the environment is very healthy for your fish is going to be the key too. So depending on your situation, if you've got a smaller tank and you've got a huge breeding colony in there, you might need to do water changes a lot more than I did. But I would have 1 male and 5 or 6 females, and keeping, doing 50% per week was enough for us. So there you go. I hope that helps. NASCAR Eamon, IFG, what is your favorite kind of African cichlid? We couldn't have imagined that this question was coming, but everybody knows mine, so you answer this one.
My favorite kind of African cichlid would be Bucochroma species, which is a predator hap from Lake Malawi.
So literally, I mean, like you're copying the Book of John, right? Like Bucanodo, that's what you're talking about? Bucanodo was my favorite for a long time. Yep. But yeah, you've kind of gone into the tank behind you is specifically predator haps, right? Like larger.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. All of the there's maybe one in here that's not a predator, but everything else is going to be a predator hap.
Okay. Very good. Well, that was a quick and easy one. Cichlid Guy 915, which is Sergio, by the way. He said, how far apart should you add fish into a new tank? And then he put in parentheses time-wise. We gathered that. But yeah, you put new fish in. How long should you wait until you put more new fish in?
If you put new fish in, how long should you wait before you put more new fish in? To be honest with you, I've added fish like one day after the other. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but hey, I've went out and saw some nice fish and brought them home, added them to the aquarium, went out the next day, found more nice fish, came home, added them to the aquarium. I mean, hey.
No, I've done the same thing, and I don't think that there's a specific rule about it. I think that there might be some people that would suggest a certain amount of time. I'm not one of those people. I look at it as, just like we were talking about before, the longer you allow the fish to settle in and take their territories and become this hierarchy in the tank, every time you add new fish to that, you're messing that up, and it has to start all over again. So get it over with as quick as possible. That's great. Now you do have the risk of bio load. I mean, if it's a brand new tank and you've got 12 fish in there and you throw 6 more in there, you just increase the bio load by 50%. Mm-hmm. That can certainly complicate things. But so in a brand new tank situation, you might want to give it some time for the bio load to catch up. But like that tank right there, I mean, I would add fish every day of the week if I could. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of room left to add more fish in there, but if I wanted to, I wouldn't get fish on a Monday and then get more fish on a Wednesday and say, nope, can't put them in there yet. I wouldn't do that. That's a well-established tank. It's a very well-filtered tank. It would not be an issue for me. If it was a brand new tank, though, maybe I would. So that's a good question, though. And then we got Corey is just spamming us tonight. I mean, he wants his name in this stream over and over and over again. This next one, we actually we already talked about. I was talking about you're going on vacation and all that kind of stuff. So next one is, oops, another one just popped in. Answer the phone. What are you doing? This next one is, being that most families, large in quotes, aquarium is a 55-gallon, what stock list would you daggone it, would you each suggest to a first-time African cichlid keeper who won't be able to upgrade to a larger aquarium? This guy knows how to ask questions. That's a great question. So yeah, you've got the whole family involved, and you got a 55-gallon tank. What is the ideal list of African cichlids to put in that tank so that everybody in the family is happy?
Yellow labs and cobalt cichlids, something like that. Something that aren't going to be overly aggressive, and something that's a beautiful fish.
Yeah, who doesn't love yellow labs? I mean, really. I've said it in the last 3 streams. I've seen tanks that are just all yellow labs, and they're beautiful. They're definitely good. I wouldn't have a problem mixing a couple peacocks in there too. Some of your haps might, a lot of your haps are going to get too big for a 55, but peacocks certainly will do fine. And if you're going to put them in there with some of the more docile Imbunas, then they'll be totally fine. The biggest thing to realize is that if you have a bunch of fish that start getting their fins all beat up and their eyeballs puffed out because they're getting beat up, your kids are going to lose interest very fast because they're not going to want, if they're anything like mine, they're like, screw that. I don't want to see these fish get, beat up and humiliated. I want all the fish to be nice. So that is, pay attention, do your research. Like Evan just said, do your research on the fish, on their temperaments, see if they're going to mix well together. I'm the kind of person, I believe most, well, I shouldn't say most. There are a lot of Imbunas, like he just mentioned, that will work well with peacocks and haps. I've got them all in here. But if it's a family affair and you're all involved, I would definitely stick with that line of Imbunas that are a lot more docile, like you said. The cobalts, the yellow labs. Cobalt zebras, some people would say, oh, no, zebras. If it has the name zebra, it's going to be too mean. But yes, I've had some mean zebras, but not all of them. So I don't think that that's an appropriate label for them. But yeah, here I go, running my mouth way too much again. I'm stealing the show. This is the last one that we have for the time being, unless one magically pops through. It's another one from Inventory King. John and Evan, not Dylan. What do you think is the best starting species for beginners? It's kind of the same thing. Stuart Grant, Jacob Freiberg, Protomalus, Placidochromis. What do we think? I mean, we kind of just did that. We almost, like I said, I wasn't proofreading these questions. So,
Protomalus, I would say, Red Empress. They aren't really that aggressive. However, you need to have a island or something to keep that fish because it gets a fairly decent size. But the Protomalus species, they aren't that aggressive. Tangerine tigers, stuff like that, you can pretty much get away with those.
Yeah, and they don't get too big too. I mean, they get, in most cases, about, well, I mean, if you're lucky, not everybody gets them to that big, but they're not going to get 3 times the size of your peacocks if you're going to put peacocks in there too. I'm a big fan of a lot of the Imbunas for starters, but I'm going to tell you, this question has been asked to me a lot, and lean more towards peacocks. If you're just beginning, I am a believer in peacocks now. There are some that have bad reputations, but peacocks for the most part are easygoing, mellow. They don't bother many people unless you're going to have the whole OB debate. Putting a tank full of nothing but peacocks, you shouldn't have huge problems. But as far as the haps goes, which he was mentioning a bunch of different haps there, I know he has some peacocks too. But yeah, I completely agree on the Protomalus. Placidochromis, they get pretty daggone big, so I don't know. Yeah, there we go. I'm losing it here. Hank Schmidt again, John and IFG. You guys rock doing this to help new people. That's beautiful.
Thanks, buddy.
That's not a question. That's just a really nice statement. So thank you. I'm losing my mind here tonight, Hank. So thank you for pepping me up there a little bit. Cichlid aquariums. My young I don't know the answer to this one. I did proofread it. My 2.5-inch dragon blood had some black spots with one bigger black spot. What is it? and Evan's
What are
feed.
you feeding, spirulina?
Yeah, this is not going well. You are totally, we're totally losing you there, Evan.
Can you hear me
Isn't
now?
the internet great? Yeah, I got you for the time being. Yeah.
I was saying that it could be spirulina spots if you're overfeeding spirulina, and there's also something that's called I've seen on the internet, black ick. I don't know what it entails, but I have seen it.
Yeah, black ick would be a new one for me too. I've been doing this a long time. I've never heard of black ick. That's something I'd like to look into. Here we go. More aquarium co-op. I know there is a discount at Live Fish Direct, but if I was a new African cichlid keeper, could I email them for advice prior? Yes, you certainly can. And not just them. I mean, Corey's being nice because he knows that they're one of my affiliates. And thank you for that, Corey. But really, any cichlid retailer, they'll do that for you. I don't know how I feel about somebody setting up their first African cichlid tank and then ordering their fish online. Not that I don't believe in ordering fish online. Of course I do. I used to sell them online, but I feel like I want you to connect. I want you to be at the store. I want you to see the fish and be like, yep, I want that one. Feel like for the first time African keeper, I would rather take that approach than just seeing a pretty picture and saying, yeah, I want that one, because there's only so much information that the website is going to be able to give you. But to answer the actual question, yes, no matter who it is, if they're a good retailer, they will certainly work with you and help you out before they send you the fish. So now I will turn that over to you and you can give your answer, Evan.
Well, I agree with you 100% on that one, John. I don't have too much to add to it, to what you just said. I agree 100%.
All right, Carlos, how's the temperature in the tank affect the behavior of the African cichlids? What is the minimum temperature you recommend? I've been running my mouth way too much. I'm going to let you have this one first.
I run my aquariums at between 80 and 79 degrees Fahrenheit in cichlids.
Now, why is that though? Like, if you were to raise it, what would it do? If you were to lower it, what would that do? Talk about the effect that differing temperature would have on the fish.
If you were to raise temperature in your aquarium, it speeds up the metabolism of your fish. And it also heightens up the aggression. If you were to lower the temperature in your aquarium, it does just the opposite. It slows both of those down.
It's absolute fact. And again, using the human analogy, just imagine Cancun, Mexico. When is spring break? April? Imagine Cancun, Mexico. No, Cancun's not a good example because it's always warm there. I don't know. A vacation spot that is cold in the winters. Virginia Beach, for example, really hot in the summer, really cold in the winter. The behavior of the people at the beach in the winter is going to be way different than it would be in the summer. Why? Because they're miserable. They're out there, they're cold, they don't feel like messing around. You get them in the warm weather, people start getting a little frisky, their inhibitions go away, and they start to act like maniacs. Fish are going to do the same thing. They're going to be a lot more active. Because they're a lot more active with the warmer temperatures, their metabolism is going to be higher. And there's good things about that. There's bad things about that. If you're trying to breed them, it's great because everything's wonderful. But with the metabolism being higher, they're basically pooping while they're eating. So they're creating more waste. Everything in the tank happens faster when the temperature is higher. When the temperature is lower, yes, they are a lot more calm. There's not as much aggression because they're just kind of in their little shell. They're not miserable, but they're not as wide open as they would be if it was hot. But the only drawback to lower temperatures, and I wouldn't say this at the temperatures that Evan's keeping his at, but if you go below 78 degrees, you start running the risk of opening fish up to disease and everything else like that, because basically their immune system goes down so low because they're so cold that they open themselves up to disease. So you definitely have to watch that and And there you go. That's what the effect. The warmer they are, the happier they are, the more frisky they are. That is the effect that these has. All right, Paul, you're doing a fantastic job. Going to cut you off. The last two that you have there, let's keep those as the last ones because it's already 9:21 here, and I've got a kid going to bed and everything else. So, two more from Inventory King. Wow, this guy's on fire. Guys, what is your favorite characteristics about African cichlids? Examples being blaze, egg spots, shape, etc.
For me, it would be coloration, which would be blaze, and shape. I like oddball, awkward-looking fish, which is one of the reasons why I switched over to the predator hats because they come in a vast variety of shapes and whatnot. So for me, coloration and the shape of the fish.
I have said this a million times. I am an absolute sucker for a fish with a mohawk. That's what I call fish with a blaze. If you're new to African cichlids, if you're not familiar with what we're talking about when I say a blaze, it's basically the stripe that goes from their eyes straight up their forehead, and it looks almost like a mohawk. And sometimes it's white, sometimes it's orange. It kind of looks like this on my head, but but that's I'm a sucker for those fish. When we're talking about fish like white lips and what's the other hap? Not white lips. Why did I say white lips? The
Z-Rock.
Well, there's that one. Yeah, I was going to get to that. But the one with the white blaze, the Endoka, I don't know. There's a couple of haps, and then you've got the lithobates, the Z-Rocks with the bright yellow one. You've got sulfurhead peacocks. You've got blue orchid peacocks. All of them that have that blaze, I just go bananas for them, and I love them. I've got a red blaze in there. I've got a blue orchid. I do not have a sulfurhead yet. I don't know where I'm pointing, but I do have a blue orchid. Doesn't have a blaze yet, but he will. And some of the fish, when you go shopping, and of course, Inventory King, his name's Paul, right? He knows this already, but I'm talking to the new people. Some of them are actually even called blaze, like yellow blaze and stuff like that. So yeah, very cool. But I love egg spots too. I mean, the egg spots on certain fish are out of this world, but it's the blaze that gets me. And I also agree with you. I like the oddball shaped fish. The Bucanodo, I love the roundness of that fish. The Morii, the Didicomps, I love the shape of Compressiceps. Yeah, I'm an oddball guy too. Allison Keats, not sure if this message was seen earlier. Could you post the list of suggestions from you, John, and IFG for aquarium equipment for, okay, well, that's not really a question. Wow, I'll see if I can do that. That's going to be tricky. Allison, if you're still watching, the reason why, if we missed it, I'm not watching the chat. I've actually got somebody that is gracious enough to volunteer his time to send questions over to me. So that's probably why it was missed. The best advice that I could give you is this is not a one-shot thing. As soon as we're done with this live stream, it's going to take a few minutes for YouTube to do it, but they're going to process it, and then it'll go back up, and you can watch it 100 times if you want. And I recommend that you do. Just go back to that section of the video and watch it. I will try to post that list, but to be honest, I'm probably not going to do it. But it's not because I'm mean. It's because by the time we're done with this, I'm going to forget. So go back and watch the replay, and you will definitely see that. Last question, once again, from Inventory King. What's your opinion on water flow? Is it better for the fish having to work to swim with high water flow, or is it better to have too much water flow? That's a really, really good question, and it involves a piece of equipment that we didn't even talk about.
Okay, so as far as water flow is concerned, my power heads, I aim them at the water surface to create surface agitation. And if I have any dead spots, I would aim them somewhat in the middle of the aquarium. I've never really used high water flow in African cichlid aquariums. Now, if we were speaking salt water, that would be an entirely different story because those corals need that high flow. But as far as African cichlids are concerned, in my opinion, I just wouldn't use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, however, use a high water flow. But I do, howe use certification.
Yeah, I don't know if it's breaking up on the actual stream or not, but you broke up a little bit there. But the gist of it was gotten through, so that's good. I use them for different reasons. I use them also for surface agitation. I definitely like that, but I also like to use it to kind of direct waste around the tank. You can't do that in every tank, because if you have a circulation pump or something like that that's super strong, and it has and you have a sand substrate, you're going to be blowing sand all over the place. But it's used for a lot of different reasons. Surface agitation, like Evan was talking about, is absolutely critical. If your water's stagnant at the top, I mean, you're going to have huge problems. Keeping the water moving, definitely. I agree with you, though. I've never really created extra water flow for the purposes of exercising the fish. I've never really had that be a problem, because I've always filtered my tanks, my African cichlid tanks, so heavy. I've always filtered them double filtration. So with double the filtration, the water's moving a lot from the filters themselves. So adding more water flow is never something that I've really had to do. I did do it in this tank because it's a giant tank, and it's a deep tank. So I have the water, the circulation directed kind of down. I mean, you can see my pump there. I just set it backwards. I've got the circulation pump circulating around the top, and then I've got my returns from my filters. Oh, how do dentists do it? One is right there, and the other one is right there. I've got those pointed down to circulate the water back up. So, I mean, I just use what's there. But with this tank, I did add it because the surface was a little bit still for me. So there you go. I don't know what really more to add to that. So there's a lot of people upset with us because we didn't answer their questions. But, folks, it's really difficult. We've been at this for an hour and a half now, and we've been answering as many as we can. But it's hard. Evan and I don't have 8 hours to sit here and answer every single question. And if your questions were missed, it could be because they were too far from the actual topic of what it was that we were talking about. We were trying to talk about an entry into African cichlid keeping. If you put in questions that didn't have anything to do with that, that might be why it got missed. Maybe wait till next week. There might be just a wide open Q&A format. I don't have a guest yet for next week, so it might just be me sitting here answering your questions. And if that's the case, it'll be a free-for-all. You can ask anything you want. So, Mr. Alexander, you got anything more that you want to add to this? Anything that you want to talk about before we start to wrap things up?
I think we covered pretty much everything, John. I think we did a fairly decent job.
Now, tell everybody if they have questions, where they can find you, all the places they can find you, not just your YouTube channel. Where are you hanging out, where people can find you? Don't put your address, but where can people find you if they want to ask you directly something?
You can find me on Facebook at Evan Alexander, and you can also find me on Facebook on my Facebook group, IFG Tips and Tricks, and I'm also on Instagram. I__F__G.
And let me tell you something, folks. This is one of the most active guys on social media that I know. So if you do try to get a hold of him, he's not going to hide from you. You'll find him. He's not hard to find. He is very active in the Tank Talk group. I don't remember the last time I looked at a post that you didn't make some kind of a comment on. So the guy is definitely a huge part of this community. If this is your first time seeing him, hopefully it's not your last, because he's got a lot of good things to offer. Check out his channel, subscribe to his channel. He deserves it. What are you up to now as far as subscribers? Where are you at?
Right at 2,700, like 2,778, something like that.
That's climbing fast. Do you have anything coming up in the near future that you want to share that people can look forward to?
I'm actually thinking about starting a new series, and it's going to revolve around peacocks and haps. I haven't out yet, but that will be coming pretty soon.
Now, I wanted to ask you, you had a video that you put out a long time ago where you did like your favorite YouTube channels, and I was very thrilled because I was on that list. Did you delete a bunch of videos from your channel?
I purged some videos, but you know, the music that I was using in YouTube, I don't know if somebody probably did, reported it or whatever. Some of the ones that had like the music on it. And
okay, yeah, every YouTuber in the beginning, they learn that pretty quick. It only takes one flag to realize, uh-oh, I better start going to all of those free music sites. So yeah, that was a thrill that I was on that list. I don't know if that's one of the ones that got deleted, but I couldn't find it. So I just wanted to bust your chops a little bit about that. So look, man, I have had a good time with this. This has been fun. I could have talked for 8 hours about this topic, but you know me, I like to run my mouth, and sometimes I run it a little bit too much. So sorry for kind of dominating this conversation, but that's the way I operate. So this has been a lot of fun, though. I certainly appreciate you taking out the time to do this. We've had this planned for a while, so I was excited about it, and I'm super glad to have you on here with me. I'm sure the viewers are glad to have your information on here too. I'm going to do with you, I didn't pre-warn you about this, I'm going to do with you what I've done with every guest that I've had on this live stream. I'm going to let you close it out. I'm going to mute myself. I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to let you close out this live stream, and I hope you do it the way you do your videos, but you're not obligated. Close it out however you want.
remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Simply take this video as a second opinion from two complete strangers online. And as always, until the next one, IFG. Peace.